Right.
So.
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
And the.
Yeah. Very.
You got a seat money over there. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I started my morning off with what they call.
Oh, by the way, you know, that's about talking to you.
This would be the basic. Green military.
You need this, and you never satisfied you, and you should have known she was a restrictor. I'm like, no, I just text messages on my phone.
I thought you were gonna say that. I was shooting you out, but you're both also gonna do that.
He's arriving by 6:35, low vouchers.
Spend your day at hospital or down there? I'll leave it for a little bit, maybe.
Is that over there like?
Okay. Actually, that's what this is about. There's the entire history.
Well, one of them's.
Yes,
Which
yes.
I think is great.
I do too.
Less 30.
I actually want.
Yeah.
So I know I did there on bicycle.
They're only that's like 1,500 square feet.
Right, it's a weird.
Weird.
That's the point, like, that's right there.
Yeah, I figured there's somebody here who's gonna know why this is a problem. So what do you do now?
And
Very well.
from
That was the same way. Sorry.
west, that's like traveling.
Good evening. Happy Tuesday. I hope the week has treated you well. So this public hearing is called to order at 6:31 PM on Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, at the Community Board 14 District Office at 810 East 16th Street. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public comment in relation to an application by a private applicant, New York Community Hospital of Brooklyn Incorporated. So the applicant proposes an amendment to the city map involving the elimination, discontinuance, and closing of a portion of Avenue O along Brooklyn Block 6772, Lot 4 in the Midwood neighborhood of Community District 14. The proposed action would demap a portion of the southerly side of Avenue O running west 85.5 feet from the northeast corner of the existing three-story building at the intersection of Kings Highway and Avenue O, and includes a triangular portion of the street at the intersection of Avenue O and Kings Highway. The total area to be demapped is 1,357.52 square feet. The applicant also proposes the modification of block dimensions and grades, including authorization for any acquisition or disposition of the related property in order to facilitate the development of a new infectious disease isolation unit, otherwise known as IDIU, proposed development for the New York Community Hospital in Brooklyn. The proposed enlargement will be 3 stories, occupy approximately 500 square feet of lot area, and will add approximately 1,500 square feet of floor area to the existing building. So now we will go around as board members and introduce ourselves. So I am Carl Henry Cesar. I am the chairperson of Brooklyn Community Board 14.
Hi, I'm Deborah Valentine, board member.
Dawn Walker, board member.
Nina Zapier, board member.
Pardon, Prezant, board member.
Tova Zenberg, board member.
Cindy Vendel, board member.
Hatem El Gamasi, board member.
Steve Khan, community member.
Esther Khan, East 26th Street Block Association member. Vern Rosenfeld, East 26th Street Block Association member.
Yvette Cleargy, board member.
Alex Lessman, board member.
Christopher Bromson, board member.
Brian Norwood, board member. Warren Zarski, board member.
Joe Dwork, board member.
Francis Epstein, East 26th Street Block Association.
And Stephen Epstein, president of East 26th Avenue Block Association.
And my Alfonso, New York Community Hospital.
Robert Wren, New York Community Hospital.
It's Martin, New York Community
And I'm Sean Campbell, district manager here at CB14. We're about to be joined by the representatives for the applicant. He got caught in some traffic and I, tried to give him a spot where he can park expeditiously. So I don't know. That was magical.
Called the 7-0 and they towed a car.
They made it.
Is that what it was? Oh, it's a remarkable spot.
Yeah, you can park quickly, but it will take a long time to leave.
Scott was there with that little slammer thing to get the car
I
out.
would not pardon. I know. And so while we do that, just a quick note of order. So anyone wishing to speak this evening, if you haven't already, please register for time with Patricia or Leander at the back of the room. And when you do so, please state clearly for the record your name. And also if you happen to be a CB14 resident or if you're representing an organization. And so we do have representatives from New York Community Hospital with us this evening, and they will begin with a short presentation. So we have Richard Lobel and Amanda, am I pronouncing it right? Iannotti?
Correct, I.
Okay, Iannotti? Okay, thank you for that correction. From Sheldon Lobel. So thank you very much. So once you get situated, we'll get everything set up.
And probably from up, probably up here, right there. You have no podium, so. So you, hopefully you will have
Uh-huh.
So we've already opened the public hearing and have made introductions going around, so
Okay, great.
you can jump in.
Sure. So thanks everyone for having us tonight. Good evening. My name is Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel. I'm with Amanda Iannotti, who is currently loading up the presentation. And we have representatives from the hospital here as well. Have you introduced yourself? Yeah, fantastic. So in 2014, in response to the Ebola outbreak, the New York State Department of Health issued a mandate that required that public hospitals develop infectious disease isolation units, or IDIUs. And so New York Community Hospital at that time began an inquiry into how it would be able to provide this space. And ideally, that space is, as it would suggest, isolated, as the name would suggest, because you really don't want a mixing of populations between the general population entering the hospital and somebody who has an infectious disease. And so, again, since 2014, obviously some of this is, you look at this and you look at some, at maybe these fictitious occurrences and when is this really gonna happen? Of course, in 2020, we're subject to the pandemic, and this becomes an even more pressing concern. So what happened next? Right now, if you go to New York Community Hospital, they do have an IDIU. The problem, however, is it's not isolated at all. You need to actually enter through the emergency room in order to access that space, which creates what at a minimum is a challenging situation, and at a maximum would be a perilous situation should someone with an infectious disease actually go into the hospital and infect what is already a compromised population. And so that is the rationale for the current request from the Department of City Planning and the city in general. And so what that request is for a demapping. And what that demapping would do would be to allow the city to have NYCH then purchase an 11-foot portion, primarily of the widened area of Avenue O, in order to situate a separate unit for this IDIU. It would be fully isolated from the remainder of the hospital, and in that way, they would satisfy their mandate. And indeed, really, unlike other applications I come here for frequently, where I'm coming in with a developer and they're seeking something for the development, this is really for the public. and for the safety of the public. What's to note and what are some questions which might arise? Number one, if you look at the hospital right now and you look from Avenue O, will anything change in terms of the public's ability to access space, sidewalk space? Will it be decreased, et cetera? No. So if you walk by that entrance right now, and Amanda will load up the map and the photos, you see there's a ramp up to the emergency area, as well as a triangular shaped portion at the end of the hospital, which currently has an iron fence around it. That's the area that would be part of this demapping. So there's no change in terms of the ability of the public to walk in that area. In fact, the Department of Transportation has asked NYCH to kind of give them an easement back for the sidewalk area to make it clear that the public will be able to access. So here's the presentation. That's a photo which we'll come back to in a second. First, we're going to run through what the actual ask is. Next slide. Okay. So as stated, NYCH proposes to demap an 11.7 foot wide portion on the southerly side of Avenue O and a triangular portion of the intersection of Avenue O and Kings Highway. We'll show you the actual demapping map, which shows this kind of slim arrow shaped land. The portion of Avenue O proposed to be demapped is currently improved with a sidewalk and contains an enclosed ramp, which again we'll show you in pictures, which provides handicap access to NYCH, permitted pursuant to a DOT revocable consent. Should the proposed demapping be approved, a sidewalk easement will be granted to the DOT for the sidewalk area that is demapped will remain open to public use. That's underneath an emergency sign. We'll show you that in the picture as well. And then finally, the triangular portion of the street at the intersection of Avenue O and Kings Highway is enclosed with fencing currently and is not open to pedestrian use. This proposed area to be mapped will be improved with a new infectious disease isolation unit. So the net result here, any change in pedestrian access to the area as currently existing? No. Any increase in traffic or issues relating thereto? No. Is there an effect on public safety? Absolutely. This will allow for an IDIU, which is probably a critical concern, and also will allow the hospital to apply for that separate building area within that closed triangle, which we'll show you next slide. So we include some maps and photos in order to better orient the committee. You can see obviously the area of New York Community Hospital highlighted in blue as a community facility. And this area in red, that's it. And that's the area of the demapping, which will be seen more clearly on the actual discontinuance and demapping map. You know, as a side note, this is on Kings Highway and Avenue O at the intersection. And again, we're in a different posture than we usually are at the community board. Usually we're asking for increases in density and we're looking at street sizes to see whether or not additional development that's entailed by the action can be handled by the street system. That's not the case here. The case here is basically taking a plot of land which is currently allowed to be used by NYCH in terms of the emergency access of the ramp, and basically giving it to NYCH for their use in order to establish this IDIU. In addition to which, I would just note that the ramp will give separate access to the IDIU so that people who are entering the hospital will not have to go through the emergency room. Indeed, what they'll do is they'll go up the ramp straight into the IDIU and will thus not be mixing with the general population. Next slide. There's the map. If you have trouble seeing the actual area of the demapping, I don't blame you. It is small. It is that portion right over there, shaped like a half arrow. The length of the arrow, again, is the awning and the enclosed area for emergency access. And the point of the arrow is that gated area adjacent to the building. Next slide. There it is. So right now there's a shed out there and there is that ramp that you see to the right. That comprises the sum total of the application and the area that is sought to be demapped and eventually acquired by NYCH. Next slide. Well, we just include some of these pictures. Obviously, people are familiar with this. You can see again the area with the gate around it over here. That's the triangular portion at the end of the arrow. The next few slides are pictures. We won't burden you too greatly with this. If you want to run through, Amanda. And so eventually to note that shed would become more of a permanent structure. The base of it would be 500 square feet, very small, but would be 3 stories to allow for offices, accessory space, total of 1,500 square feet. I would note that the actual hospital is subject to a BSA variance. So you can't actually do any work on this site. You can't actually build anything there without going back to BSA and asking their permission. We would do so to the extent that the next move would be to build a structure. So we're not even done. We're gonna come back. Next slide. Okay, and then these are the architectural plans, and very simply demonstrating the future expansion. There's a site plan. Here's a proposed first floor plan, a vestibule, a spray hose, right? It's just like in the movies. And then there's an observation room, hand wash, always a good idea. And then there's a patient bedroom, and then mechanical space. The next slide should show the upper stories. Again, building up, there's accessory space located on top of this 500-foot structure, very small, but very necessary. Next slide. And there's the proposed elevation of 3 stories. Amanda, if you want to go through. That's it? That is? Excellent. So we have representatives of the hospital who you've obviously met. And with that, the entire applicant team is happy to answer any questions. Is Maxim here? Oh, hi. Nice to see you in person.
Not running this
So
meeting
beautiful.
after. Have you signed up?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Before we do, Mr. Levine, did you sign up already or?
Yes,
Mr. Epstein.
Mr. Epstein, my apologies. So then.
I just asked. Well,
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
Okay. Richard, you mentioned 3 stories. I assume there'll be additional staff members have to be hired.
Can you speak to that? Are the current staffing for the IDIU or for the infectious disease area, would there be more people hired for this space or no?
We will probably use ER staff that's currently in doing the acting and boiler room. Upstairs, above there will be upper store, will be used for the ECU, primary care unit, and then above that, ICU. Okay.
Cool. So I see board member Prasad, and then you're up. Yes, yes.
Does need to be ambulance access like on Avenue O in order to get people into that building?
No, the existing ambulance access will suffice.
Okay, but will those patients then have to go through the emergency room?
No, they'll go directly into our triage room.
Got it, but it'll be through the current
Ramp.
location, ramp. Thank you, that's the word, perfect. Thank you.
Well, what I wanted to know is it sounded like there would be a separate ramp to go into the infectious disease unit.
The
How are
exist-
they getting in?
the
If they're not,
The existing ramp will be tied into the infection. Can we go back
Yeah.
to the drawing?
Probably around 2 or 3 more back. Great, right here.
Exactly. You see that front area
yeah,
that Richard is pointing at? That's the ramp. So
the
inside
ramp that's
the-
already there, you're
it's
gonna
the
open
existing
part of
ramp.
it?
The front of it will be opened to go into the existing space.
Okay, so no additional ramp.
No additional ramp.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify, I'm sorry, so it's one ramp, one goes to the emergency room and one goes to
Exactly.
that building. Okay.
Okay, so next I see board member Sabir, then Alvarez, then Bronson, and then I'll get the other two.
This is also for you. How many patient units are you allowing for in this sector?
This would be two stretcher areas in here.
No,
Does
how
you-
many patients?
Patients.
You
But then
expect to
once
see?
they're admitted,
Oh,
many-
then they
how
go
many
up,
will go up?
then they go upstairs.
And we have isolation rooms in.
You
other
have
areas
room
on
for
the
10, for
patient
20,
How many
for 40?
beds?
Yes, so.
How many?
Patients, we could say 20 at this point.
20?
20. And they'll be stabilized, they go up to isolation rooms up above. And then, once they determine whether they're contagious or non-contagious, they can move to other rooms.
You would triage them in that area.
And no, the question was, after you've triaged them and you know this
What they
person,
have.
how many infectious patients will this facility be able to hold?
Oh,
Up to
that-
20,
that's-
up
That's
to-
pretty simple because, we have, on the upper floors, we have, provided negative pressure for half of a wing. So, how many patient beds do we have there?
41.
41.
41.
So you have 41 beds.
We changed all the room again for the COVID, or isolation, so we're protecting everyone, the staff and the patient.
Yeah, COVID,
But you're not using that for the part you had before, you're using this. the whole
Excuse me,
41.
Excuse me,
Okay, I'm done.
ma'am, please,
I'm
thank you. Yeah, so,
My phone.
Okay.
and so next we have Board Member Bronson, then Alvarez, and then Morty, and then Hudson.
Hi. I'm just curious, what is your annual volume in the emergency department?
Around 23,000 visits.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so next up we have Board Member Alvarez, then Morty, and Hudson.
Okay, so the subject area is currently used by easement, correct? And now you're gonna outright purchase it from the DOT?
So it's not, all of it is not. This area of the ramp is currently, a revocable consent with DOT. This area that's fenced in is it's a longstanding use, but it has never been applied for or deeded to the applicant. So the applicant now would seek to establish what's, probably adversely possessed, but the truth of the matter is, it's been a while.
Okay, and then as part of the deal with the DOT, have they asked for any conditions? Are there any proposed improvements to the way at all out of this?
Not really. I mean, what they've asked for is that there's an area over here that's under an awning. And so they've asked for an easement back to the city for that sidewalk area in case in the future they want to make any improvements and to allow pedestrians to freely access. That's the only real kickback.
So no plans for the roadway, no changes or anything? None.
So Board Member Sarsky, and then Hudson.
Thank you. So I understand this right. Proposed building is a straight line with what the existing ramp is right now. How does that compare to the next building over, which is also the next hospital, being my body, that actually takes out further than the very big hospital? How is that as far as the sidewalk straight line is concerned? Is that a contiguous straight line, or is that kind of, this is wider than what that building, that building further down the block is? That's to kind of go back to. No, I'm saying for the next building, the next
block.
No, buildings, the next building that the hospital occupies.
Do you want to put up the area map so we can just? Let's go back.
The area map.
There we go.
There we go.
Can you,
Sure.
Next building after the line.
Yeah.
Next building.
That's the opposite direction.
Right, the opposite
Yeah.
direction. So how does this extend further out than that straight line, or is it a straight line?
It's actually recessed back. Yeah.
That's what I want to understand. We're not actually, somehow sticking
No.
it further.
No,
And have you taken into consideration the height and its impact of people across the street about, their visual sight line and issues of sun changes or light changes for the buildings that live there that are right there across the street?
you're talking about literally this portion.
Right, and there are windows directly across that are used to.
Yeah,
it's very, very minimum at the most impact.
Discuss that with the neighbors in the building over there who have that sight line.
Yeah. They're not wires.
Yeah, I mean, Maxim, is there any shadow impacts that's to be measured? Right. So, for example,
Will you repeat that? It was quiet.
like as an environmental matter, when we run through all the different impact categories, they asked us to look at shadows, except if you screen out. The minimal nature of this, and given mostly that, if you're looking at east-west, the east-west shadow impact, they didn't even ask him to screen for that.
Board Member Hudson, and then you're next to, yes.
Thank you for being here. So the area we're talking about it is the fenced area by the sidewalk, which emergency sign it by the hospital at the moment. So the sidewalk by the hospital on Avenue O will still be accessible to the resident in the area. And the traffic will also still be going through Avenue O between Kings Highway and Bedford.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay. So the value of homes and houses in that area, do you think in the long run will be impacted? It's a lot of private homes over there.
Yeah.
And I would prefer, like, we hear from the people who live on the block. I see the traffic will not be affected. The sidewalk itself will not be closed. But there is private homes and there is houses over there, and it's a very congested area.
Yeah, I think for the applicant, one thing that's compelling is that they're essentially providing additional space for the population that's already in the hospital. So right now, there have been instances where people who potentially would have an infectious disease walk into the emergency room. As you can imagine, the absolute terror and chaos that creates is not good for both for people's health, but also in terms of potential impacts. And so I think the bottom line is that there's no impact on traffic. There's no impact on pedestrians here. And, it's like a mandate from the state. They have to eventually do this in some way and form. A 500-foot building footprint on an area which is not used by anyone is basically like the sanest way they think that they have to address this. So yes, there's absolutely, issues in terms of people in the area, but this won't, the only thing this does, I think, is improve public safety.
So I'll go with our community member here, and then board member going.
So I wanted to say, do you envision more ambulance traffic on Avenue O? Because now it is so congested and they double park. And it's just, and you're going to get more people, and I think it's just going to be more difficult for people. We're on East 26th Street, so when you come down, the only way you could get off of that block, you have to make a right turn past the hospital, and sometimes it's just outrageous because the ambulances are double parking, taking up space. And so now you're going to be having additional population because you have more rooms. Don't you see that as contributing to more traffic and more difficulty for people in the area?
No, just to start on that, there's no more rooms in accordance with this. The rooms that they discussed, the 41 rooms, are already in the existing hospital. So this is basically an isolation and observation area, and they allow people to just to offload upstairs.
Did that answer your question?
I mean, you make it sound very good. I just know from driving over there, it's exceedingly difficult because the ambulances have a tendency to double park. So it is a 2-lane road, but most of the time it's only 1 lane because they're taking up space.
Sure. So then,
I mean, have you looked at it? Have you?
I'm going to actually jump in and try to help answer that question because as district manager here, I've been trying to work in cooperation with the hospital, several residents on the block, and elected officials in the area. And I spoke to both Weinstein staff today that look, soon will be Coleman Yeager's staff in January. And then Councilmember Varnikoff's office has been very interested in looking into this and wants to know, is either watching this on live stream, so hi, or we'll check out the recording and we'll talk tomorrow. But we have worked with the Department of Transportation. And so it's interesting that they're asking for an easement back. And I'm hoping that this project can leverage some DOT action on some of the remediation that we've asked for on that block. Reconsidering angled parking. We've talked about that for many, many years. They did change the timing of the lights, and we're going to talk about school bus routes to maybe alleviate that school dismissal time. But it's hard, but I'm going to work with the elected officials and to the extent that the hospital can use some of its leverage to try to get DOT to do what DOT can do, because we need the cooperation of DOT and NYPD, frankly, for some enforcement on the illegal parking from hospital staff. So we'll recommit to going back to the drawing board and trying that all again. which is why when we pointed out that it's actually set back after that glassed-in area, because that looks like that's where angled parking could be if DOT would just do it. Does that help any better?
Again, living on the block, I just know that it is very congested there and the ambulance, you know, whatever, double park and take up, take up space.
That-
And I'm very
Excuse
here.
me a second. If I can possibly ask a question that might clarify this. It seems to me that this is really just a matter of redirecting people who are coming in, the existing people. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that's it. So we're really not taking extra people. It's the same people that they're normally getting. It's not getting extra people.
No.
What it's trying to do is make it safer for anybody who has an infectious disease coming in, so that can go to an area that would be more isolated. So there's not really any additional ambulances, any additional anything. What it is trying to, with the air conditioning that they mentioned and how they're just trying to make it safer. By the way, I don't even know how to know that the infectious disease, so everybody has the same damn thing anyway. But in fact, so it's really not any extra traffic. It's not any extra ambulance. It's not any extra anything. What they're doing is trying to address a more safe condition inside the hospital when somebody gets there, correct?
That's correct. And when patients come in, we ask them all the questions that would, trigger, they came from another country, or they have some condition that we can just move them to that area, triage them, do what you have to do for them, and then say, this is definitely isolation. Let's get to an isolation room and protect everybody who's in the triage area of the emergency. When you walk into emergency rooms, there's a lot of patients and families there. You don't want them to be exposed to someone. So that's what we're trying to get them up this way. So they're just away from everybody else. And then we do what we have to do, and then we move them upstairs. So.
But the residents' problems are real and they're entrenched, and I just want to acknowledge that, and then I won't speak out of turn again.
Thank you. So on Board Member Alvarez, I saw that you had.
Oh, you previously made a point that you were coming back for additional work. I was just curious.
Oh, yeah.
If you had a preview on what to expect on that front.
Yeah, so there's an existing BSA variance that was originally granted in the 60s and was subsequently amended over time. This site is under BSA jurisdiction. So any physical changes which would be made to buildings at the site would require us to go back to BSA. The idea here, given that the request from BSA at the time was not for floor area, they would need to do new calculations and see whether or not any additional issues like lot coverage were implicated. At a minimum, they'd be going back to BSA for a letter of substantial compliance, saying that there were no new waivers and they'd be able to proceed. But, in a more intense scenario, they would have to amend the variance, come back and get additional approval. So that's a, mini preview of what might go down.
So are there any visioning of what those increases in expansions would look like?
Oh, it's the 1,500 square foot facility at the end. That's basically it. So the existing ramps are already there, so that's been included in the calculations. And it would just be, right now there's a shed out there, so they haven't really gone for any DOB approvals. But if there's an actual physical structure, they need to get permits, they need to go to BSA, complete a zoning analysis.
So it's strictly for this proposal right here, not for anything else in addition. Okay, that's it.
I see District Manager Campbell and then I see every hand as well. So
The shed will go away if this project moves forward
Definitely.
sooner rather than later.
That's too.
We'll try.
you're up now.
Yeah, I have that question too, but I wanted to say, you don't anticipate that you're going to need more staff to accommodate this new unit? I mean, you're saying that they're there, but you probably can, accommodate so many infectious disease now that you have a special unit. I would just assume that you're going to get more staff.
Yeah, we don't envision increasing the staff. It's, that is really a screening and staging area. So it's just screening certain patients, staging them, and then moving out.
So I see Morty, and then I see
Then Tova.
Tova, and then Andy. Yes. Okay, Tova, then.
I'm just curious, what percentage of community hospitals in New York have this special unit?
I wouldn't know.
Say all of them.
All of them.
You're saying this is the last community hospital at that one?
I would say
One of the last?
one of the last.
Really?
Do you have any numbers as to over the last, let's say, 2 years? I'm not gonna go all the way back to the beginning of the pandemic. How many patients you've seen in the hospital that would have been able, that you would have directed into this unit? What, last year or so? It doesn't have to be exact. Is there an estimate? Like, meaning you're seeing patients that you say, oh, this patient we would have put in this isolation during the triage.
If we have this patient that comes in, who we know, instead of bringing them into the main area, protecting everyone, and, we do have a triage area, and the triage nurse one would be dedicated to that area, and they would see them, this way would not contaminating every part of the.
So to follow up, so you're clearly seeing these patients already anyway.
Yes.
The idea behind it is, let's just have a place where we can put them until we get them to one of the rooms that's already upstairs and isolated within the main building.
Yes.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Binda?
Hi. So basically, to recap, we're getting rid of the ugly shed. We're making the hospital safer, not losing any parking spaces, and we're not losing any walkway space.
That was perfect. That is correct.
You're hired.
Are there any additional questions from either board members or those other members? Richard? Okay, so seeing no additional questions,
Well, there might be, is there any testimony?
are there any pre-registers?
Did you have something that you wanted to say?
Oh, you do.
You look
Yes.
like you're eager to say something.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Stephen Epstein, and I've been living at 1481 East 26th Street since 1970, about 54 years. My home is about 3 houses away from the intersection, actually from the hospital's emergency room, intersection of O and East 26th Street. For the past 22 years, I've been serving as the president of the East 26th Street Avenue Block Association. When I bought my home, community hospital was smaller than it is now. I have seen the hospital's physical plant and services expand even into the apartment house at 3619 Bedford Avenue, corner of Avenue O. The latest and unofficial expansion was the placement of a white trailer about 3.5 years ago on a piece of vacant land partially owned by New York City, adjacent to its emergency room facility. Both hospital officials and the community board staff have been unable to tell me that the hospital obtained an official permit for this ugly trailer, ugly shed, which really does look like a construction shed. You saw the picture. This trailer, utilized by community hospital for storage purposes, does nothing to enhance the appearance of our residential community. On behalf of my neighbors, I'm asking that this trailer be removed from its present Avenue site by the end of next month. If the homeowners have to abide by the city's zoning regulations and building code, why should a hospital be treated differently? No double standards. Here is the heart of my presentation. I'm opposed to New York Community Hospital's application to demap the triangular space at the Avenue and Kings Highway Service Road so that the hospital could construct a new infectious disease unit on this Avenue site. This small piece of gated land should remain free of a structure. Don't we value some empty spaces in our city? The community board district manager is well aware, as she stated, numerous complaints the office has received for years about the traffic problems in Avenue O due to double parked ambulances, delivery trucks which impede the vehicle traffic, a lot of honking by angry drivers, vehicular tie-ups on my East 26th Street block, which often results in the drivers backing up to Avenue N. Not very safe. You see, Avenue N, as you know, is one way going towards Nostrum's problem. This traffic problem is especially exacerbated when school buses drive down my block and have to turn onto Avenue O to pick up or discharge students. We have about 100 private homes from Avenue M to Avenue O, I counted. These buses serve a lot of children on East 26th Street between M and O. Enlarging the hospital facilities on Avenue O certainly would greatly increase our present problems. And I fail to understand, using common sense, if you have 3 additional floors, why you're not going to need additional personnel just in terms of maintenance alone. I urge Community Board 14 to vote against the York Community Hospital's Demapping application and also vigorously pursue removal of the hospital's ugly construction shed on Avenue O. We asked the York Hospital, now known as Maimonides Midwood Community Hospital, to be a good neighbor and to show consideration to our residential neighborhood. Thank you for your attention.
Anybody else? So,
Speak. I'm Frances Epstein, and I live on 1481 East 26th Street. And in 1980, this area that we're talking about, this is a community hospital map. It was a planting area. I would like the area to go back to a planting area. We need sunlight, we need light, we need air, and do something internally so that these people with infectious diseases can go into the hospital without taking that area. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to address some of the points that were raised. So, you know, you take a look at this application and you take a look at everything else. And yes, I think as Sean highlighted, there's issues in terms of traffic, parking, ambulances. I don't think anyone's denying that. I think like what's kind of been heartening for me is listening to conversations from the hospital and the fact that while it is a very difficult situation, they're really trying. And I think that, you know, my conversations with Ms. Campbell have been to that effect. But like when you're taking a look at just this alone, which is like 500 feet, and allowing them to basically create a situation in which everybody, despite people who may not even want this, can be rendered safer by allowing this to be in a separate building. I think it's really hard to argue that. The fact is, like, everybody knows who's been in the hospital that that there is a tremendous amount of crowding, that there is just a lot of meat in the sausage casing, and the fact remains that this allows for just a little bit of breadth outside of that. The potential good that's going to come from an IDIU that's outside of the physical structure of the building is just, really outweighs a lot of concern over like what happens to a 500-foot grassy area. I really think that, you know, this is not going to take new facility maintenance workers. It's not going to take new staffing. The services that are provided in this potential new structure are already provided in the hospital. They're just done by people going through the emergency room. How frightening would it be to be in the emergency room with a family member, a newborn, a child, and to be exposed to someone which, you know, again, there's no exaggeration here, has been to a foreign country, for example, has basically acquired a virus for which, you know, this could be a deadly situation. So again, like, I think the hospital is trying to address certain aspects of what it's like to be a community hospital in Brooklyn, but I don't know whether or not you take it out on them for this. I mean, I think if you open up conversations in other areas, I don't think we do anything to this idea.
Board Member Sankey?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, I am a registered nurse and nurse practitioner. Last winter, this past winter, I had the experience myself of being, I had something that developed into a serious infection and was in an emergency room that, because it was so crowded, instead of having one patient in the curtained gurney, you know, area in their gurney, there were 2 of us. The person next to me is coughing her blasted head off, and I'm going, oh my God, what else am I going to get while I'm here to add to my current situation? Okay, and to shake your head like, you know, this is a serious situation. Well, but it shouldn't happen, and you would not want to be the one who also has other health issues and
Let's
dealing
be
with
careful
that.
to stick to the,
you know,
proposal and
So
the
the fact
crosstalk,
is,
Nina.
right, so the fact is that the need to be able to say, isolate somebody who is coughing or whatever until you can do, say COVID tests, strep tests, et cetera, and clear them is critical. Not just for me personally, but for anybody else who's there.
I thought you said you were the one.
Motion
who
for
was
the
infected.
question.
That I didn't mean
Motion
to
for the-
minimize.
Make a motion.
Wait, you were gonna finish and say, like,
May I?
yes.
I didn't mean to minimize the fact that when you're in an emergency room and you have a lot of people, there are always issues. I'm just curious, small thing. This new facility will have 41 beds to replace.
No.
41 can accommodate 41.
41 beds exist now. They were talking about the beds that exist now.
So
It's just a place for them to go initially, for them to triage and then take them to
I thought they were
the
going
isolated,
upstairs within the
in the
building.
existing building.
Existing.
Not in the new building, in the existing building.
They will be in the old building.
Right, they're
The
special rooms
offices in
there.
the new building.
That's. It'll be like a new, okay.
So we call for the question.
I'll take one
So
more.
then they're going through the building to where they would have gone before?
No. Well, they're going into the isolation unit, being observed, tested, and a determination's made. If it turns out that there is a concern, they're going to be transported to one of these beds that's in the existing facility, which is in a special ward specifically designed so as not to allow for circulation of disease.
So I'll take one more.
They will have open beds then in the Richards building. Yeah, they will fill with other patients, which will make for more traffic and more staff.
This is ridiculous.
That's how it sounds, and nobody's explaining it better.
I just, based on what you said, do the patients, those start out in the emergency room because you're not sure if they're infectious or not? And only once they're identified as being infectious, then they go to this new isolation? Or do they go someplace immediately that's separate?
They would be screened
Well, so where are they screened in the emergency room?
right before the entrance, so they'd be screened. And there would be questions that are asked, if you left the country, what are your symptoms? And if the patient meets that criteria, they'll go back to the staging area and that would be the staging area for further observation. And if it's deemed, and testing, and if it's deemed the patient meets isolation criteria, they go upstairs, existing floors with the negative pressure rooms, so the air doesn't go out. It's really keeping the air inside the room. And it's existing, so we're using existing space.
Okay, thank you. And so,
Motion to approve.
second.
Seconded.
Okay. So just for clarity, so there's a motion to approve the recommendation for the applicant proposing the demapping, and that motion has been seconded. And so the vote that's going to happen now is that the community board 14 members in this room, they will be voting on whether they approve or reject that recommendation. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not counting because just by, you
Yep.
can ask for those who, and then I'll do the math.
Okay, you guys. Okay, all those opposed?
No, community board.
Right, just my opinion.
No,
That's
I'm
fair.
just saying, so board member, yes, it's important, okay. And then any ineligible to vote? Any abstentions? All right, so the motion carries.
Can I explain something?
Yes.
This is a recommendation that will go to the full board on October, I forget, 7th. In the meantime, continued concerns, continued questions, can be directed to me, Sean Campbell, at this office. And, we'll work with the hospital and DOT and the elected officials to try to remediate some of those problems that are ongoing. And I'll just take a point of privilege and ask the hospital to continue working on the doctor parking that shouldn't be on that block at all. But, you know, I understand the concerns and will, you know, do what I can to work on them.
If I may ask, Izzy, who known a long time, if you could just send me a letter outlining your position, what you're gonna do. Esther asked some great questions, Fern asked some great questions, you heard the questions. Send to me a letter addressing their questions, and I'll pass
We
it.
maybe even do another community gathering by you and try to, you know,
Would be nice.
tease some of this out with with your neighbors and continue that conversation.
Welcome them to the room, definitely.
Yeah.
Have a meeting at 1:00.
Can I come? May I join? Maybe get to.
Sean, what you are, I mean, you are.
Sure, book another meeting, why not?
If you don't talk, I wait.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
And put your freaking ring on.